So yeah, there's the hill right there. This is the world famous Cooper's Hill cheese roll, and I say world famous because it is now. It's become a thing. It's probably the most recognised quirky British festival there is. They've made a Netflix documentary about it. But yeah, this is really exciting because I've always heard about this, even when I was like a little kid, and I always thought it was weird and wonderful. But now it's such a big thing. It's such a mainstream thing. It's almost inaccessible. You can see there's thousands of people here. In fact, I don't know how close I can actually get to the hill. The hill is there, and they're cutting in the trees. There's already thousands of people up there lining the route, and there's thousands of people in the woods that you can't see. There's people coming up the hill here, where I've just come up, and people streaming up the road there, and people coming up over the back over there. So I think I'm not going to get very close, to be honest. Hello, my name is Ollie, and this year I've been trying to visit some of Britain's quirkiest and strangest festivals and traditions. Look at their wonderful history and see what it's actually like to be there as a visitor. So far this year I've been to a big festival, a small festival, an old battle and a very new battle. But all of them had one thing in common: they were all relatively obscure and all took place in the north of England. But now it's May, a time when Brits celebrate the height of spring by letting their hair down a bit and having a bit of fun. And I've been drawn to the hills of Gloucestershire to an event so quirky it's actually become very, very well known. Perhaps the most famous local tradition in Britain today. Cooper's Hill is a prominent bump in the landscape outside of the town of Brockworth, and it's almost completely covered in trees, except it's been strip waxed rather conspicuously on one side. This is the course of the cheese roll. It's just 180 metres long, but it has a gradient of 1 in 2. The rules, of course, are simple. A large reinforced wheel of double Gloucester cheese is rolled down the hill, and a small group of people race to the bottom after it. The hill is so steep and the cheese so heavy that it can reach up to 70 miles an hour at full pelt, meaning no participant will ever catch the damn thing, and it's usually hit the bottom of the hill before many of them have travelled more than 20 metres. What's also nearly impossible is that any of the chasers, or rollers as they're known, will manage to stay on their feet for the whole race. Most people end up tumbling, rolling or skidding down the hill at great speed, leading to plenty of injuries, clashes and visits to the hospital. And this is also why the event is so famous. There's nothing more fascinating than seeing crazy folk hurl themselves down a steep hill and bounce their way to the bottom completely at the will of gravity and fate. Cheese rolling is not unique to Gloucestershire, but here at the daunting Cooper's Hill, its history goes back a surprisingly long way. First recorded in 1826 in a message to the local town crier, it's actually thought to have evolved from a tradition that has its roots hundreds of years before, in either pagan rituals of fertility and welcoming of the spring, or it could also be as a way to determine grazing rights. It started to grow steadily in popularity in the 1950s and faced constant threats to stop it happening due to safety concerns. In 1997, for example, a whopping 33 people were injured overall, and as a result, only 2 races were held the following year. Despite setbacks like this, and pandemics of course, the popularity of the cheese roll has exploded in recent years. Online you'll find tomes written by travel writers, bloggers, photographers and poets trying to big up this event. But I didn't come here to make a promotional video for the race. I wanted to see what it was actually like as a spectator, and as you can tell, it didn't go very well. Despite arriving very early, the woodland and the bottom of the hill were surrounded by people. There was nowhere nearby to stand and get a view of the action. So I did what thousands of other visitors had to do and watch from this field here, looking at Cooper's Hill from a distance and with the bottom of the course blocked by nearby houses. Right, so welcome to an interlude. This, of course, is Cooper's Hill. This is at the end of the day, so it's 6 o'clock in the evening now. And you can see there's nobody here. There were thousands of people here hours ago, and I've come back to have a look at the hill properly. And you can see, yeah, nobody here. The fence has been taken down. Things have been cleared up. There's nobody here at all. And you can see the gradient of this hill, how steep it is. It's daunting. I won't want to walk down there with nobody looking on my own. for fear of embarrassing myself, let alone with thousands of people spectating while I run down here as fast as I can, chasing a wheel of cheese. This is what the top of Cooper's Hill looks like. Goes on, it's all wooded, it's very beautiful wooded area. Then you get to this cutting in the trees, and it just takes off like a roller coaster, like a drop on a roller coaster. And it's very steep, it's incredibly steep. And you don't realise how steep it is until you get here, until you look down. It's enormous, daunting, horrific face. And you wonder why. You wonder why people first decided to hurl themselves down there after a cheese. And then you look at it a bit more and you go, yeah, why not? Now, I'm a very positive guy, but from my spot further down the hill, spectating on a tiny race like this was less fun than you'd think. Bear in mind that each race lasts about 20 or 30 seconds and that they're held 15 minutes apart from each other. The best views are from the very edge of the course. Even a few steps into the woodland and your view is obscured. How much fun you have here depends on your expectations, and I think mine were just way too high. Most people around me seemed to be enjoying the atmosphere, but others were visibly bored and left after only the first race. Perhaps I'd be having so much fun at the other traditional things I've been doing this year and was hoping for more of the same. Perhaps cheese rolling is really only memorable if you're actually taking part. It's alright. It's alright. I think it's a great example of what happens when a local traditional festival gets overhyped and gets a lot of attention, a lot of media attention, and it just kind of gets over-exaggerated and spoiled a little bit by the crowds, and it stops becoming local and it becomes something else. And you come here and it's a bit of a letdown because people have told you how amazing it is, and it's not amazing, it's okay. So, honest review, probably not worth it, but if you're in the area, maybe. If you don't mind sitting in the traffic or parking a mile and a half away. But this is not the only hill in Gloucestershire I've come to see today. There's another one in a little village nearby called Tetbury. And in that race, they go both down and up. So, let's get out of here and go see how they got on there. Not far from Brockworth is Tetbury, and yes, I may have erroneously referred to it as a village, but it is in fact a small town, and a very attractive one at that. A typical Cotswold look about the place, with many of its town centre buildings dating back to the 16th and 17th centuries. During the Middle Ages, Tetbury became an important market town in the region for the wool trade, owing to its gently rolling hills nearby, ideal for sheep grazing. The tradition I've come to see today dates back to the 17th century and is said to have begun when drovers drinking at the pub at the bottom of the town's steepest hill began racing each other up to the top, carrying a sheep or a sack of wool on their backs. Now supposedly this was to impress the local ladies, which just makes me feel sorry for 17th century Cotswold ladies. In 1972 the race was formalised and organised in pretty much the way you can see it today. There are several races throughout the day, and runners, these days women as well as men, race up and down the hill from the Royal Oak pub at the bottom to the Crown pub at the top. There are individual races and team relay races, and thankfully runners spare the sheep and carry heavy wool sacks instead. Like with the cheese roll, the hill itself is the star of the show. This is Gumstool Hill, and as you can see, it's incredibly steep, a 1 in 4 at its steepest. The type of hill you begrudge having to drive up, let alone run along carrying a cumbersome sack of wool on your back. The sacks vary in weights depending on who carries them. For the men it's 27 kilos or 60 pounds, and for the women it's half that, 14 kilos or 30 pounds. Carrying them is only half the battle. Lifting them up and keeping them on your shoulders is incredibly difficult. Add in a steep downhill, the element of intense competition, and thousands of eager onlookers, and you'd think you got a recipe for some serious injury. But thankfully, while I was there at least, nobody came a cropper. The race had to go on hold following the COVID pandemic, and this year was the first time back after a 4-year hiatus. So yeah, as you can see, it's a fantastic day. There's thousands of people here. There's stalls, there's food, there's entertainment going on. The pubs are open, everybody's happy. So the start of the race is at the bottom of the hill, just on a slight crest where the Royal Oak pub is, and that's where the races usually start. Apart from the relay races, there are relay races, and races will start at the top of the hill and then run down. It's a very grueling race, very heavy weights, but a lot of encouragement from the crowd. A lot of pride at stake. Now, what I really liked about coming here was to see that the tradition had given birth to a proper town festival with market stalls, food, street music and dance. It was the most family-friendly festival I'd yet been to, and all this had spawned around the races to embrace them and make the most of them. It certainly set the wool apart from the cheese. Now, usually I'd prefer to see something without all the usual tat around it and see it in its most traditional way, and in that sense the cheese roll should have been better than the Woolsack race, but if I'm honest, this was just more fun. There was more going on for my brain to enjoy, and you could actually see stuff happening. What a way to end the day. I'm glad he ended on that one, not the other way around. Yep, the people of Gloucestershire certainly love challenging themselves on these little hills that got down here, and why not? Fair enough. Yeah, wonderful county, weird county, but wonderful at the same time. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, wherever I end up.